KCAA Loma Linda. The Legacy KCAA 1050 AM and Express 106.5 FM.
I'm Jessica Ettinger, CNBC. A still strong September jobs report has stocks poised for losses on Wall Street this morning. Bond yields are popping. Investors did not get the labor market weakness they were looking for to persuade the Federal Reserve to pull back its aggressive interest rate increases. The U.S. added 263,000 jobs in September. That was the lowest since April, but the unemployment rate ticked lower as more people went to work, and that's the opposite of a slowing economy that the Fed wants to see to bring down inflation. Elon Musk has until 3 weeks from today to complete his purchase of Twitter. If it doesn't get done, Twitter's lawsuit against Musk to enforce the signed purchase contract will go to trial next month. Cannabis shares are higher. President Biden said he'd pardon people with prior federal offenses of simple marijuana possession in the U.S., keeping a campaign promise. I'm Jessica Ettinger, CNBC.
Are you the parent of a 2 to 7-year-old? Listen closely for an exciting free radio offer. By now, you've probably heard of ABC Mouse, the Parents' Choice Award-winning online learning program that's actually changing the lives of early learners everywhere.
ABC Mouse is like a little one-on-one teacher. It has helped her so much.
Right now, we're offering a special radio promo to try it free for a month, but you have to go to abcmouse.com/radio to claim your free month. That's abcmouse.com/radio.
Sponsored by Age of Learning.
Are you the parent of a 2 to 7-year-old? Listen closely for an exciting free radio offer. By now, you've probably heard of ABC Mouse, the Parents' Choice Award-winning online learning program that's actually changing the lives of early learners everywhere.
ABC Mouse is like a little one-on-one teacher. It has helped her so much.
Right now, we're offering a special radio promo to try it free for a month, but you have to go to abcmouse.com/radio to claim your free month. That's abcmouse.com/radio.
Sponsored by Age of Learning.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show on KCAA. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsor, Teamsters 1932, a strong union with 14,000 members in the IE. Go to Teamsters1932.org for more information. Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting Teamsters1932.org/organize to start today. I'm Rick Smith, host of The Rick Smith Show, inviting you to listen to my show during the noon hour every weekday right here on KCAA. My show is sponsored locally by Teamsters 1932, a strong union with 14,000 members in the IE. Our message is clear. Unions improve the lives of working people. You have a right to form and join a union, so go to Teamsters1932.org and get started now.
Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org. Are you looking for a good union job? The Inland Empire's 14,000 member strong Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get working people trained and placed in open positions in public service clerical work and in jobs in the logistics industry. This is a new opportunity to advance your career and raise standards across the region. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org. One of the best ways to build a healthier local economy is by shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224.
This is KCAA.
Commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
So front and center here at Netroots Nation, labor organizing. We just had a conversation with Christian Smalls of the Amazon Labor Union, sharing some of his thoughts on the success that they've had. The other rock stars here at the Netroots conference, the Starbucks workers. And again, lots of attention on bottom-up organizing. Young people, low-wage workers saying, better wages, hours, conditions, voice on the job, kind of important stuff. That's why I've asked Billy Nix to come talk with us. She's one of the Starbucks organizers from New Orleans here at Netroots Nation. Billy, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for talking to me.
So I assume first Netroots Nation?
Yes, very first one.
So thoughts? Any thoughts initially?
It's really cool to be here with like-minded people that are all plugged into the labor issues. We did a caucus earlier where we basically presented these ideas about labor organizing. We had people discuss it, and we learned a lot in that. It's nice to have some fresh perspectives because I feel like I know just about everybody there is to know in the New Orleans labor community. So coming out here and meeting new people with fresh perspectives from other places, like there's this one guy talking about unions and in China, or not China, in Egypt, and it's just completely different for different places.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day, though, it still comes down to wages, hours, conditions, and worker empowerment. And I guess the question I got to start with you, do you have a labor background? Is this something that you were drawn to naturally, or is this something that, out of necessity?
So I did not know anything about union organizing until I got started. I pretty much learned everything that I know from Starbucks Workers United and then labor organizers in New Orleans teaching me. But no, I had no idea. I thought unions were just for factory workers or coal miners,
Yeah, and I think that's the important message out of this. The reason I ask is I ask everyone who gets into organizing, what drew them. Was it a family connection? Was it, in the workplace, they said, hey, we've had enough. It's time to make things better. So it's interesting that you say, look, I don't have a background, and I'm now at the front of this. Now you're one of the leaders where you had no background. I think that's an important message for people to understand.
Yeah, anybody can get involved in organizing. In some ways it is difficult, but in many ways it is very easy. You just have to have these conversations with your coworkers.
So what's the conversation? If you're talking to somebody, walk me through as an organizer how you talk to your coworkers.
Yeah, so at Maple Street we're a very close-knit family, so we were constantly talking about our shared issues on the job. Just talk to your coworkers about what issues you're having. Talk about your pay, see if you can find any discrepancies. It's really just about starting these conversations about what can be better in your workplace.
You said talk about your pay. Now, my wife, when she was the manager of an office billing company, if they were found to be talking about their pay, the process was fire them. Because, oh no, we can't talk about that, that's bad. And it's illegal to do that, but most workers don't understand that. And I think, talking about pay issues, talking about what you make and what you earn, I think is important to bring transparency so that people aren't getting cheated and we don't have the kind of structural problems we see today because we allow it to be held in the dark.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that even without a union, you have certain rights, like striking is a protected activity, bringing your issues to management, having a workplace petition where you just like write down all the issues that you're having, have your coworkers sign it and present it to management with a couple of your other coworkers. These are protected activities, and so is talking about pay and you know, your benefits and things.
Now that's an interesting thing because, you know, not too long ago some Starbucks workers went to the manager and said, here are our demands, and then you know, how did that work out? Accused of kidnapping, accused of harassment. What was the story there?
Yeah, so essentially what these partners did is what's called a march on the boss, where partners stop production. They all come to their manager with their issues. They talk about it. They essentially just hold the manager accountable and ask for immediate resolutions. And somehow the manager got, I'm being kidnapped out of this, even though, like, in the training for this, it's like, oh, you can block the door so the manager doesn't leave. But they didn't do that in that case. The manager just got up and left. So they didn't even try to keep the manager in the store. She was not kidnapped.
And pushed her way past.
Yeah.
And you go, well, wait a second. I'm missing the kidnapping part. But I guess, look, there's no depths that they won't go to, well, to thwarting your activity.
Yeah, Starbucks is going a little bit off the deep end with their union busting tactics. I feel like every day it just gets worse.
Now, I look at what's going on with Starbucks, and you go, I really think you guys have a shot of, at some point in the very near future, getting a contract, because the media attention, the public relations nightmare that's being caused by just the abuses that have been going on for decades. Look, Howard Schultz and company, they're not doing anything new. It's just that you guys are highlighting what's happening, and it's finally coming to light.
Yeah, and I didn't even know until probably a couple months ago that there was a union push in Starbucks in like the 70s, and Howard Schultz shut it down himself.
Yeah.
And people don't know about that.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Billy Nix. She's an organizer with Starbucks in New Orleans. If folks wanted to get more information, maybe Starbucks workers in our listening areas, where would they go? What would they do?
So our store specifically has an Instagram page called SB Workers Maple Street. I run that Instagram if you want to get in contact and learn how to organize at your Starbucks or at anywhere in the industry. Just send me a direct message. I'll try to get you as much support as I can.
Now, you're in New Orleans, and obviously we've got stations all over the country. Is this, individual stores? These are independent unions that you're building in individual places, or is there some overarching plan to eventually tie them together?
Yeah, so the plan is to try and get all of the stores that are unionized on the same page. We have like the National Bargaining Committee, the National Concerted Activity Team, trying to get everybody synchronized.
Right, because you're up to about 200 election wins at this point, something like that, right?
Yeah, 220.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even it grows more and more every day. I'm struggling to keep up with it, and that's impressive. It's something that I'm assuming is going to continue down the road, which is why Starbucks is asking for kind of a freeze, aren't they?
Yeah, they're asking. Well, they're saying that the NLRB is rigging the elections, which it's crazy to me.
How so?
Yeah, I don't know.
By allowing people to vote and doing it in a timely manner. Oh no, you've got to put your thumb on the scale.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, I feel like Starbucks is the one that's like messing with elections because they are hiring in anti-union people to be on these ballots. They're having partners challenge ballots whenever they do have the elections. They're just doing all these things. Of course, they're firing partners before they can even vote. But it's crazy. Starbucks is the one that's messing with elections, if anything.
Yeah. And the courage that the workers have shown is just incredible. And in this moment, I'm incredibly optimistic that labor and organizing is going to continue to grow. And we're in a moment, I think, where the labor movement across the board needs to grow. I mean, we've seen 40 years of stagnant wages. We've seen, a decline in the standard of living. This is the way we rebuild that.
Yeah, like every day I see that there's a new union, like Chipotle is unionizing, Trader Joe's is unionizing, and I feel like because of Starbucks and Amazon doing their thing, taking on these big corporations, it's giving people, it's empowering people to do the same.
So I guess the last line of questioning I have for you, as a consumer, as a citizen, how can we help you? I'm a boycott guy. If Howard Schultz and Starbucks is treating their people poorly, I'm just not going there. Is that the push? Is there something else? I've also got friends who go, no, you've got to go to Starbucks and you have them write union on the cup or solidarity or something. What's the marching order for listeners who go to Starbucks, who drink coffee, who want to help you? What's the ask?
I mean, if you're not already going to Starbucks, I would encourage you not to. But if you are a Starbucks drinker, you can always support by, having the Union Strong or Solidarity Forever on your cup. And just, giving the workers words of encouragement. If you know a store in your area that's unionizing or is unionized, I would say go to that store. Like, if you're going to go to any Starbucks, go to one that's unionized or organizing.
Is there a way for us to find that? Is there a website to say, hey, this is the unionized store, this is not? Is there, like they do with hotels, is there something along that line?
I can't remember right off the bat what the website is called, but if you Google Starbucks Union Store Tracker, there's a website that has like a map of all the stores that are either they have an election coming or they've won their union, so you can find out where the unionized stores are near
Excellent
you.
stuff. Billy, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Great stuff. Keep up the great work. I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts again real soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. I'm going to take a quick break here from Netroots Nation. Back after this.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back here to Netroots Nation. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. One of the things I love about coming to these conferences, you never know who you're going to run into in the hall, and that's why I'm thrilled to sit down with Hamilton Nolan. He's a labor reporter over at In These Times. Does some fantastic reporting, and always somebody I love having on the program. Hamilton, thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks, man. Good to see you in your home state, even.
It was good to see you. I was actually kind of surprised to see you here.
I'm here moderating a panel with some progressive organizers tomorrow, so I'm here courtesy of the News Guild.
Nice.
Shout out to the News Guild. Yeah.
Shout out to the News Guild. Now, front and center, a lot of the Starbucks workers marching around, a lot of the Amazon labor union people. Labor seems to be the new black.
Well, we'll see. I hope so, man. I mean, it definitely is in the streets, and whether I guess I'm writing a book this year, which is kind of on this very question, which is sort of like labor is very hot at the grassroots level right now, but can we actually translate that into a powerful, functional, stable, long-term labor movement, which I think is still a bit of an open question.
Yeah, because a lot of people have been looking at the Amazon labor union's victory at JFK 8 and going, we could replicate this everywhere. And I'm like, well, I hope we can, because you're then talking about societal change. You're talking about more people being involved in grassroots kind of organizing, kind of being, instead of this concept of the union as a kind of a business entity, you're internalizing union as part of your existence. That, to me, is the positive way to go.
Yeah, and ALU is such a great example of what's happening because, as you know, they were an independent union. The independents were the first ones to actually win an election at Amazon. And now we have all this, or they have all this incoming interest. They'll say we have incoming questions from Amazon warehouses all over the country. But what they don't have is like the resources to organize all those Amazon warehouses. You know, they just filed for an election in Albany, which is great, and you know we all hope that goes well. But it's such a good example of like a place and an institution and a group of workers that's harnessing all that grassroots energy, and the institutions in the labor movement and the big unions and the ones that do have the resources and the money need to pitch in and help ALU, you know, be able to build the bandwidth to actually respond to all that interest from workers, because that interest doesn't last forever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But can you do what you know what they did, what Chris Smalls and the crew did there at JFK 8 all across the country? Can you replicate that?
I mean, look, I believe you can. I'm an optimist for the labor movement. I mean, I always believe that people will organize. If people understand what unions are about and what they do, they will naturally be in favor of unions, because unions are good for workers. So, right. I mean, it's all a matter of cutting through the bullshit and the lies. And but, you know, the energy is there today. So it's like the positive sort of feeling of a lot of regular people towards unions is in the air right now, and we have to strike while the iron is hot and take advantage of that. And so again, it's like this sort of atmosphere that we're in right now, that when everybody's talking about Starbucks and Amazon everywhere you go, it doesn't last forever. You know, it feels when you're in it, you're like, hey, this is the new normal, but obviously it's not. You know, you've been around a long time, and you know these things like go up and down. So the places that have the resources to build institutions got to build on these independent efforts that are happening, like ALU. And you know, some unions are. I mean, I know the teachers gave them a bunch of money to get an office and stuff like that. So all that stuff is great, but like, we got to all kind of lay our egos aside and our territorialism aside, and our everybody wanting to be the ones, you know, to grab all these workers and say, look, man, we all got to go where the energy is and help out. You know?
No, you're right, and because Amazon right now is the target, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, look, they won an election in Staten Island, but when you think about what it's going to take to get a contract, that's going to be a bit, you know, Amazon is going to drag that to the Supreme Court and back as many times as they can. So, you know, that's another place. Like, we need all that firepower of labor politically, you know, in D.C. I mean, this is ultimately going to be a political question, like to force these companies to the table. Same thing as Starbucks and Chipotle, and you see a lot of places closing stores now. Starbucks closing stores left and right, firing organizers. Chipotle closed the first store that they had that unionized in Maine. These are kind of like companies not feeling that they're going to have any penalties. I mean, all these companies are not stupid. They're making the political calculation that they're not going to be held responsible politically, they're not going to be held responsible by regulators, and they're not going to be held responsible by consumers or workers. So we have to prove them wrong.
No, and that's what I've been saying for a while. It's great to win an election every now and then. You got to get the contract.
Yeah.
And until there's an entity that's going to either force that to happen or public pressure to force that to happen, I don't ever see Amazon coming around unless there's the pressure, and that comes from us. And that comes from workers across the spectrum organizing or understanding the importance.
Yeah, you know, and look, I mean, and you look at a place like Starbucks, you know, Starbucks, those workers are doing everything that you would say that they should do, which is when Starbucks is not coming to the table, they're striking. They're striking at Starbucks stores all over the country, and they have been for months and months, you know, and that's like what you would say the workers should be doing, but it takes more, you know. It does take ultimately our alleged friends in politics have to come and lean on these companies, lean on Howard Schultz, and especially on Amazon, which is the real, you know, behemoth. You're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar company. Yeah, I mean, and of course, we can't expect that regulators in D.C. are going to be as labor-friendly as they are now. So if they're not getting it done now, it's only going to get worse.
No, you're absolutely right. And this is where the argument that the NLRB is too friendly to workers, so we need to slow the process down, seems to be an interesting argument made by these companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw this was related to antitrust, but, Amazon filed a lawsuit saying that they were being harassed by the FTC. Bezos was being harassed by the FTC. So, I mean, these corporations genuinely don't believe that they should be regulated because they haven't been regulated essentially since the Reagan era. And so, again, like from the perspective of the labor movement, we really, really, really got to strike while the iron is hot. And, like, we got a friend at the NLRB. We got a friend in the White House, at least to by the standards of U.S. presidents. And we got to get something out of that. We got to get some tangible progress out of that. We got to get contracts sealed. We got to get union campaigns won while we have the good conditions, because when it gets worse, it only gets harder.
Yeah, ultimately, at the end of this, for all this energy and all this activity, you got to make people's lives better.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the promise of the labor movement. I mean, that's what we tell people when we organize. You are going to take a risk, and you're going to risk your job possibly and your livelihood, but you're doing it, ultimately to make your life better and your coworkers' life better. So it's very true. If you win a big election in an Amazon warehouse and you got thousands of people to go out on a limb and vote for that, and then you can't pull a contract in a year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, how many years are going to go by before they're able to get a contract at an Amazon warehouse? So, yeah, we got to throw everything into that, because it really does. It goes stale. It goes stale, and people start getting cynical, and there starts to be a backlash, and all that stuff is kind of poisons the well for organizing.
Yeah, if only we could have that backlash against Amazon.
I know. Well, it's
they treat their workers terribly.
Yeah.
I mean, the injury rates are higher than the industry standards. They talk about, we pay, this high wage, but the reality is in the warehouse industry, they're on the lower end.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the reality is they're the bad actor.
Yeah, and man, I've been saying for months, man, Democrats should be running against a guy like Jeff Bezos and against a guy like Howard Schultz. I mean, they should be putting their picture on billboards. They should be having them in TV ads being like, these are the villains,
Yeah, but how do you do that when Howard Schultz was almost was going to possibly be Hillary Clinton's labor secretary?
Yeah, well, look, it's a new
Think
day.
about that world.
I know, not for nothing, but I would love the next reporter that interviews Hillary. I would really love them to ask her about that, because I don't know that she's ever responded to that directly, even though that comes up every time Howard Schultz does something terrible. So, whoever's out there that has access to Hillary, please ask her about that.
But isn't this the problem with Democrats as a whole? I mean, they're trying to be the party of working people, but while dabbling their toes into, we still need to pander to corporate America.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you think back to the Clinton era in the 90s,
do I have to?
The Democratic Party as an institution was much more neoliberal at that time than it is today. So,
sure.
I mean, institutionally, there has been some progress. Democrats are always going to disappoint us and always going to piss us off, and it's like moving an aircraft carrier. So you're always going to be trying to pull that party to the left. But, I mean, even when you think of pure political opportunities, think of Bezos. Who likes Bezos? Even Republicans hate Bezos, Republicans hate Bezos. Like, take advantage of this. Like, everybody hates this guy. This guy is a villain. He's a legitimate villain. He deserves to be a villain. And instead of worrying about why working people are running off and voting for Trump and saying we're going to lose this right-wing populism, let's have a genuine form of populism. Let's have a genuine worker-centric form of populism and say, like, these are the villains, and we're going to be the party that stands against that.
There you go. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Hamilton Nolan. He's a labor reporter over in these times. Also an author. You got a book coming out soon, maybe? We expecting that?
Probably early 2024, because the publishing industry is very slow. But I'm working on it now, and it's all about sort of everything that we're talking about right now. Organized labor. There's a lot of reporting in it about various aspects of interesting unions, exciting campaigns across America, and reformers within the labor movement. And so please put it on your birthday list.
There you go, because there's a lot going on. I just don't know that it gets reported on enough. I know you do a great job, but there are some other folks who do incredible work, but it's just not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, between the two of us, we probably know every labor reporter in America, which is actually a bad thing. Like, there's just not that many. There's not that much of a labor press, which is too bad when you think about how important it is of an issue structurally. So there really are some great labor reporters out there, but not enough.
A lot of work to do. But Hamilton, I appreciate the work you guys do. Fantastic stuff. I look forward to the book. Good stuff.
Good. Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you.
Anytime. Good to see you as well, our good friend Hamilton Nolan. We're going to take a quick break back here from Netroots Nation here in Pittsburgh. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day striking Teamsters in Minneapolis defied martial law. They stopped scab trucks, forcing the release of their strike leaders. Armed with bayonets and machine guns, the National Guard had patrolled the streets for nearly a week. They seized scores of strikers and union leaders and threw them into military stockades. Drivers were outraged. They defied Governor Olson and Major General Walsh, who, on behalf of the Citizens Alliance and trucking bosses, were determined to break the strike. Soon after strikers were imprisoned, drivers began chasing scab trucks across the city. Multiple reports poured in of picketers forcing trucks to stop. Some unloaded their cargo onto bridges. Others chased, captured, and damaged the scab trucks. Strikers ripped ignition wires out, forced scabs from the wheel, and then disappeared before police and the National Guard could arrive to retaliate. In just 3 hours, strikers had overturned nearly 70 trucks. Unable to stop the superior force of striking drivers, Bill Brown, Vincent, and Miles Dunn were ordered unconditionally released from the military stockades. Now, employers, the governor, and other strike-breaking agencies were eager to propose peace to federal mediators. But they proposed to scrap the terms of their earlier May agreement. In response, the leaders of Local 574 issued a general strike call. In it, they asked, quote, "Is there one man so blind as not to see that if 574 is allowed to go down to defeat under the brutal hammering of military despotism, the whole labor movement of the city will have been dealt a mortal blow? Union men, brothers, sisters, fellow workers, what are you going to do about it? We appeal to you for solidarity."
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
The Old Home Place is a classic theme of Americana, expressed in everything from Norman Rockwell paintings to Woody Guthrie's powerful folk lament, "Ain't Got No Home in This World Anymore." But for a heart-rending modern-day version of the emotional pull of home, you can't beat the poignant wail of a new song entitled "The Lowdown Down Home Atherton Rich Man Blues." Warning, you might need a box of tissues to get through this sad saga. Atherton, California, is a small town of some 7,500 souls who face a dreadful housing crisis. Unlike most situations, though, they are alarmed by a looming threat of too much housing. It seems that a recent California law requires cities to provide some affordable multifamily housing to help cope with a growing statewide shortage of homes, meaning Atherton needs to put in about 350 townhouse units as its share. Townhouses shriek the locals. This can't be. Unrich people live in townhouses. You see, Atherton is a precious enclave in the heart of the Silicon Valley, where only tech billionaires are allowed. The price of their mansions averages $8 million, with each one secluded on at least an acre of land. So, townhouse people? No way! As one affordable housing advocate put it, Atherton talks about multifamily housing as if it were a Martian invasion. In a letter to the city council, the multi-billionaire Andreessen family wailed that allowing more than one residence per acre, quote, "will massively decrease our home values and quality of life." I'm sure you weep for them, so grab a tissue. Yet some Athertonians are at least trying to find solutions. One suggests that all of the residents' swimming pool cabanas should count toward the town's affordable housing requirements. This is Jim Hightower saying, if that won't make you cry, nothing will.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So here we are in the final day of Netroots Nation, and a little bit more of a subdued after a couple of nights of activities. Let's put it that way. Folks, the faithful are coming in for the final day of panels and of organizing and networking. And I'm glad to sit here with Adam Green. He's the co-founder of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. You want to check out the work that they do, boldprogressives.org. Adam, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be here with you, Rick.
So I see you're wide-eyed, bushy-tailed. Not a rough night for you?
You know, I decided to skip the after party and get a few hours sleep, so I'm doing okay. But that's been fun.
So as this wraps up, and this has been a really great couple of days of networking and of organizing opportunities. Where does it go from here?
Yeah, it's really been a family reunion of sorts. People who collaborate together who haven't seen each other for a long time, and so much work actually happens in the hallways, right? 1 5-minute conversation can blossom into a whole campaign plan.
Yep.
So what happens from here? We got to save democracy and save the working class, and I'm excited to talk to you about it.
It's just little things like saving democracy.
minor details.
So how do we do that? I look at the state that I live in. Here in Pennsylvania, we've got a guy running for governor who's the antithesis of democracy, Benito Mastriano, yeah. and the fear is that our state is moving towards the crazy, and we end up with someone like Mastriano.
Yeah, there's some basics. I was talking to someone the other day just saying, it's really important that you vote. And they were like, yeah, 2024. And I was like,
no.
Oh, wait. And they're in Florida, another swing state. And I was like, wait, there's an election this year, right?
There's an election every year.
Yeah, sure.
And this is the thing that drives me crazy, and I'm glad you brought that up. People think elections are presidential. I'm going, no, the important ones are all the other ones.
Yeah.
Presidential is somewhat important to a degree to me. The president kind of has some influence, but it's my local dog catchers, my local county commissioner. It's who runs our states. That's where the real power is. That's what really affects my life.
That's absolutely true, and it lays the groundwork for the presidential, right? I mean,
right.
So many voter turnout was down in 2010, and that's when the gerrymandering happened and led to where we are right now with the state legislatures and the policy happening in the states and Congress. And right now there's a very dangerous opinion that might be issued by the Supreme Court next year that says that the entirety of election planning in any state, including Pennsylvania, I think Pennsylvania is actually number 1 on the list, is just dictated by the legislature. The Supreme Court of the state can't even weigh in. The governor can't weigh in. It's called the independent state legislature doctrine. And that's very scary in a world where gerrymandering has made these right-wing legislatures, right? They can basically say after the election, we think there was some voter fraud, so we're going to send some other electors. And it would be legal if the Supreme Court rules next year. So we have to pay attention to state ledge. We're very invested in Secretary of State races in some places like Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada. Pennsylvania, the Secretary of State that counts the votes is appointed by the governor. So it's actually a double bang for the buck here. Everybody should be chipping into Josh Shapiro and making sure that he wins. And, don't take for granted that if you know Pennsylvania that they know there's an election. So let's start with the basics. Anybody across the coffee table can start by just educating people. There is an election this year.
There you go.
And then there's a ladder of engagement, donating, volunteering, and prioritizing some races.
This may be weird, but I give Donald Trump credit for exposing that kind of direction that Republicans were heading, moving elections away from we the people and the popular vote and back to the legislatures, back towards the powered elite that they obviously control because of gerrymandering. I give him credit for exposing that. Now, it's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to steal an election, but that's been in the works for a while, I think.
Yeah. There's this pattern of things happening right in front of our face, right? Like we got the Dobbs decision 2 months early. I'm not sure that we properly prepared for it, but we knew it was coming. And here he's pretty much telling us, I'm going to steal democracy if I win again. And I'm trying to endorse people who will steal the election next time. There was a CNN article this past week that the headline was, 10 election deniers are the Republican nominee for Secretary of State.
Yep.
That's super scary. It's not one person, one outlier. It's a strategy. They're moving pieces on the chessboard. And that's why we're asking people to chip into Secretary of State races, volunteer, remember to vote, and vote down ballot. And, we can all make a difference.
Absolutely. And this is where you go, when they tell you who you are, who they are, believe them.
Believe them.
Is it that difficult? And look, I've been screaming about this stuff for years, of how they're rigging the elections and how they're, even before a ballot is cast.
Yeah.
But yet it was all about stopping the steal and Joe Biden in his basement learning coding or whatever Q schemes they were dreaming up. It's crazy how the right-wing messaging machine has been able to kind of brainwash a generation into believing things that aren't true.
It is a parallel universe. In the early days of the Trump administration, I did a lot of Fox News, and I was trying to just get a message out to people. And I was shocked at the alternative universe that I was living in as I got asked these questions. It had nothing to do with reality.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, surely the other guests on this panel will object to this framing. It's like, no, I was like a loner, like trying to insist that certain things that were true were true. And that's what people are seeing. It's not that they are necessarily, I think there are some hardcore right-wing ideologues who are part of the misinformation campaign. And then there's just millions and millions of people who tune into Fox and the various Ben Shapiro derivatives of Fox, and that's all they get, right? That's all they're being told, and that's why it's actually so important that folks like you exist. And I think we need a more independent media ecosystem.
No, it's the reason we started this program 17 years ago.
Seriously.
Look, I'm driving a truck. I moved into a new area. My truck driver buddies are spewing Limbaugh and Hannity, and saying, "Hey, we'd make more money if there was no union here, and things would be better if the union didn't exist." Yeah. And I'm going, wait, where in society is that happening?
Yeah.
And I decided, we've got to balance the airwaves a little bit, and it's been an uphill climb ever since.
Yeah, and it will continue to be for a while, but we have to start making some movements. Now, I want to make sure that we talk about how we rebuild a working class in America, and make sure that Democrats understand that that people understand that Democrats are the party of the working class. But someone posed to me the question recently: why is it that we have such a good agenda, but when voters are asked who do you trust more on the economy, it's 50-50, or sometimes Democrats lose? I thought that was a really interesting question. I don't know if you have any profound thoughts on the answer to that question. I'll start with that, actually.
I'm trying to figure out how the tables turned, and you're interviewing me now.
Okay.
No, but I think it had a lot to do with the fact that, you've got a right-wing media culture that's used to feeding people misinformation. Yeah. And while we've been fed, all of the DLC corporate, Democrat stuff, which I've been opposed to, all the neoliberalism, all the, the deregulation that came out of the Clinton era, that's what people think of when they think of Democrats now.
I think it's right. I'm also constantly reminded that everyday people don't necessarily watch the national news or imbibe the national media the way that we do. I'm not sure they know what was in the Build Back Better plan, and
they don't.
Right.
Because we spent time talking about numbers. It was like 6.2 trillion. It was 3.5 trillion and 1.522.
And that's even if they're watching it all.
Right.
My co-founder Stephanie, who I think you interviewed, she recently talked to somebody who, in central Pennsylvania, is not very political, but probably votes Republican, did vote for Trump. And when she started asking him, do you support raising the minimum wage? He was like, oh, of course. Do you support this pro-labor policy? Oh, of course. Do you support choice? I do. Then he actually asked an amazing question. He goes, why did Joe Biden let them get rid of choice? Which, to me, was like, oh, my God. It's not that he's a rigid right-wing ideologue. It's that the information, people just think, oh, president, something bad happened, and that's why the inflation attack is so, right? People aren't necessarily tuning into the news. He gets his news off Facebook. So the more I think about it, the more I actually come back to something you said before, which is local matters. Fighting local fights matters. When Bernie stands on the picket line with local Amazon workers, that sends a signal to people in that area who either work at that location or who know people who work there that, oh, the Democrats are the ones who show up for workers, right?
Oh, no. You hit something that's been one of those sore spots in my side for so long.
Yeah.
I met President Obama a couple of times, shook his hand twice. Mm-hmm. He told me we were going to get something better than the Employee Free Choice Act. We didn't get anything.
Got nothing.
He said he was going to put on comfortable shoes and walk the picket line. And while I was sleeping on the granite floor in the Capitol in Wisconsin.
Yep.
He was nowhere to be found and didn't mention a word about it.
Yeah.
That's the reason people don't see Democrats as the party of the working class. When there's a street fight to be had, they're going to offer to hold your coat. They're not going to ball up their digits and get in there and take a punch, even if they lose. And that's why I think a lot of the white working class, and we'll split the working class, the white working class sees the Republicans as fighters. Even if they're fighting the wrong battles and even if they're fighting things that are in the complete antithesis of their interests, they're still fighters.
Yep.
And while I don't agree with it, I understand it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And you mentioned when there's a fight to be had, that's actually two things. You can join a fight that's happening, which Obama could have done in that situation, and you can pick a fight.
Right.
I think Democrats just need to pick more fights, and the more I think about it, the more local fights. And I'll tell you just one more story. I spent one of the best years of my life in South Dakota on a Democratic Senate campaign. Before I was actually even a self-identified progressive. I was just a Democratic press hack. And this bill came up that year that the senator I was working for offered a big provision of, which would basically protect little guy family farmers from being taken over by big ag monopolies, right?
And who could be against that?
Who could be against that? Well, a lot of corporate interests were against that, and they flooded the state with money. And there was a question of, would we reverse position to, cater to these big money attack ads and try to make them stop? And the senator was like, this is my position. I'm going to fight for it. And my job was to pull together a press conference at the Sioux Falls Public Library. And these farmers and ranchers drove from up to 4 hours away to be there. And this one guy gets up to the podium who was not scheduled to speak, which is your worst nightmare if you're a press secretary, having your first event with your new boss. But he gets up and he says something I'll never forget. He goes, look around this room. look at all these cowboy hats. Pretty much every one of us is a Republican. And we're standing with Democratic Senator Tim Johnson because he's fighting for our economic interests. He's fighting to protect our family farms. And you could hear a pin drop. And because it was such a live fight that year, every other press conference we did was about ag issues. And I spent hours on the phone with these people who were evangelical, anti-choice, pro-gun, church-going, lifelong Republicans who were willing to cross party lines when the fight was on, and the Democrat was clearly saying, I will protect you from these big corporations.
Yep.
And we won that year by 524 votes in a year that Democrats got wiped out across the nation in a 20-point red state. And it's always stuck with me because that stands for the proposition that we're talking about, which is we can connect with working people when the fight is on, if we pick a fight, and if we are squarely on the side of working people. And we just got to do that more.
Absolutely. It's what I've been saying for, 17 years now.
Well, you've been right.
Because I want somebody who's going to stand up and fight for those issues that help a kid like me growing up in the projects in Cleveland get to where I am now, living in a neighborhood with doctors and lawyers. And I want that kid growing up in that same project to have the same opportunities.
Amen.
It's that simple. But, Adam, I appreciate the time. Keep up the great work. I hope folks will check out the website, boldprogressives.org. Adam Green is the co-founder of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Check that website out. Adam, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for all you're doing, Rick.
Good
Take
stuff.
Care.
Going to take a quick break back here from Netroots Nation. Make sure you check out that website. Netrootsnation.org is the website. Going to take a quick break back after this.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back here to Pittsburgh at Netroots Nation. Make sure you check out the work they're doing, netrootsnation.org, the website. Voting. Yes, voting seems to be one of the common themes here at the Netroots Nation conference, getting people out to vote. How are we going to get the young people out to vote? Because they seem to be the ones everyone's relying on to save democracy, to save the nation from, well, doom and gloom. And here to share some thoughts on how we do just that, I've asked Santiago Meyer to come sit down with us. He's the executive director of Voters of Tomorrow, votersoftomorrow.org, the website. Santiago, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So that's the big question. How do we make sure your generation gets to the polls?
Well, Gen Z is as energized as ever. We have seen in the far right wage a war against Gen Z, and we are ready to really go back and tell them that we're not the right generation to be messed with. So the way to get us out to vote is really just by talking to our generation, showing them what fighting for us really looks like, and talking to us in a way that we can understand, not just being condescending, not just calling us naive because we think that big things can happen, but actually going in and talking about our priorities, talking about climate change, talking about gun violence, talking about how we will protect abortion rights across the country, because that is something that young people deeply care about. And we need to make sure that we're talking to young people in places where they are. We're talking to them in ways they understand. And that is why organizations like Voters of Tomorrow are doing the work, because we are Gen Z. We know how we like to talk because we talk ourselves that way. And we really need to be investing in more organizations like VOT to make sure that young people can lead the charge to get young people to the polls.
Now, I look at your generation. Every generation has trials and tribulations. They've got things they go through. But I'm looking at the last 20 years, and this has been a pretty difficult 20 years of crisis, of economic collapse, of pandemic, of all kinds of things. Your generation has seen some stuff already.
Yeah, I mean, my friend John De La Volpe, he leads the Institute of Polling at Harvard, and he recently wrote a book about Gen Z and politics. And the argument that he makes is that every generation goes through crises.
Sure.
But that the big difference with Generation C is that while other generations generally have a come-together moment at the end of it, Gen Z has not had that. We have had, we were born with 9/11. We grew up during the financial crisis. We graduated into pandemic. We graduated during a pandemic into another financial crisis. We have grown up with gun shooter drills. The world is burning with climate change, and we have not had a moon landing. We had not had a fall of the wall of Berlin moment where everyone can come together and really appreciate humanity. So we have seen the worst of the world, but we've never truly seen the good parts of it. And that has really just forced Gen Z to try to fix all of this because we understand the damage that it's done to us, and we don't want it to happen to the next generation.
Yeah, see, I look at some of the videos on Instagram and on TikTok and other places where your generation is viewed as the weak generation. I've hurt myself. That kind of. I'm sure you've seen them. Is that fair?
I don't think it's fair at all. I mean, I think the fact that we are able to talk about what we feel makes us strong because it's something that could have solved so many issues in the past. I mean, when people talk about what they're feeling, it doesn't make them weak. It actually makes it so that you can have a conversation about what is going on and how to make sure people aren't hurt. And especially with everything going on, when we've had crisis after crisis after crisis, when many of us got involved because of mass shootings, when the ocean is catching on fire because of climate change, it is incredibly important to understand how people feel. Because if we're not doing that, we don't know what people are going through, and people are going through a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to my formative years and, trying to find that 20-year period where you grew up through. And, I remember Iran-Contra. I remember, mutually assured destruction, diving under desks for drills. Because evidently, school desks were the way that nuclear winter was avoided.
Absolutely. Your desk would protect you from nuclear fallout.
But, we all knew that was a joke. But you throw that school shooting thing in there, that's something that's really possible and frightening. And I can't imagine what it's like to go through that. And I fear for my kids.
No, I mean, you have now an entire generation of students who literally jump when they hear a balloon pop because you never know if it's just a balloon popping or whether you're about to be the next victim of a mass shooting.
Yeah.
And that is horrible. It has left an entire generation absolutely scarred and damaged and living afraid for their lives. And that really does something to people. I mean, you can't expect people to be healthy when they're always living alarmed and always ready to jump under a table.
Yeah. You listen to the Rick Smith Show with Santiago Meyer, Executive Director of Voters of Tomorrow. VotersOfTomorrow.org, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do and get involved. Now, the big question is, the million-dollar question is, your generation is, being touted as the most political generation. You're going to vote. Will the numbers bear that out? Will you be able to get, and I know that's your goal, going to get them out?
Yes. I mean, yes. We are aiming to exceed 2018 turnout and to break midterm records with the highest youth voting turnout. And we are quite confident we're going to reach that goal because, again, Gen Z is under attack. The far right is coming for us, and we're going to show them that they pissed off the wrong generation. So we are not going to back down. We're not going to stay home. We're going to turn out and vote and make sure that they are voted out in such a manner that they can never hold political office again.
Well, that is the hope. But, again, history has shown us that the young vote sometimes doesn't. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of talk. I always want them to show up. Miss that day.
Listen, we've overcome history in 2018. We've overcome history in 2020, and we're going to overcome history in 2022.
Please do, and especially here in Pennsylvania, because there's a crazy guy running for governor.
Doug Mastriano has no clue what's waiting for him when Gen Z turns out in November.
So what's the message to your fellow Gen Zers? What's that? What do you tell my kids?
I mean, it's really a simple message. The far right is scared of you because they understand that if you vote and you start using the power that you have, that they will never be politically viable again. That's why they're coming for all of us. That's why they're coming for books. That's why they're coming for our rights, because they want you to be afraid. They want you to be discouraged, and they also want you to be uneducated. there is this narrative that the far right is coming for teachers, and now that is also being encouraged by the teacher shortage. But the teachers are not the ultimate goal in their quest. Teachers are just in the way. They're coming for teachers because teachers are the bulletproof vest protecting students for what the far right actually wants to accomplish, which is to absolutely brainwash Generation C and now Generation Alpha. So my message to Gen Z is use that power. You have the numbers, you have the strength, use the power to punish the far right for everything that they're doing and hold them accountable for coming for your rights, for coming for your books, for coming for your right to control your own body. And once we do that, we are able to create the future that we truly want.
There you go. Santiago, I appreciate you taking time for us. I hope you're right. I want people to come out and vote, especially young people, because, look, I'm looking at you guys as the next greatest generation to save us, save our democracy, save the planet. A lot on your shoulders.
We appreciate your support. Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Santiago Meyer, Executive Director of Voters of Tomorrow. Quick break back here from Netroots Nation. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. So as we wrap up our time here in Pittsburgh, and look, the crew had a fantastic time here. Beautiful place to visit. Loved being in the Market Square area. Lots of nice restaurants and opportunities to meet and network and talk to folks, especially the good folks here on Radio Row who have been so fantastic to help us out with our needs and get the program out and all that. And our friends over at Free Speech TV. If you don't check out the Free Speech TV show, by all means do. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. and every Saturday at 7 p.m. And they rebroadcast stuff all throughout the week. Easy stuff to find. And look, we seem to be in a lot of places. Easy to find. You can find that at thericksmithshow.com. So again, as we wrap up here, a lot of the labor voice part of it, really interesting moment. The fact that you're seeing this kind of coordination and people coming together. My problem with the Democratic Party and with the left and with the liberals and whatever you want to put left of center is always how divided they are, how silo thinking they are, and how easily they are to pit against each other. And it's conferences like this one that help bridge those gaps, that help people start to understand each other and where they can work together and how they can work together, and in which arenas to do that. And that's why this stuff is so important. And there needs to be more of these on the left. There needs to be more of this kind of coming together of the minds to share best practices and to share ideas and to do all of those things that the right has been doing for decades. They have been doing this stuff for, mobilizing activists, educating supporters, and then, really, using the human capital, the brain capital to move us in a positive forward direction. For me, that's the exciting part of this. Now, the question is, what happens out of this? Every time I come to one of these conferences, every time I come to one of these get-togethers, I go, okay, this is great. We had a good weekend. We had people who came together. We shared stories, we shared ideas. We laughed. Some people cried. There was all of that. What tomorrow? What the next day? What's going to come out of this lasting? What's going to move the needle forward? And I'm guardedly optimistic, given the moment that we're in, given the post-Roe stuff, given the fact that there's this resurgence of labor organizing, great opportunities. The question is will we take advantage of it? That's simple. But I appreciate the positive comments of our time here at Netroots. I hope folks enjoyed the coverage of it. We will be back in the studio live tomorrow, and taking your thoughts and all of that. But I've enjoyed our time here. Hope you have too. If you missed any of our coverage here of Netroots Nation, by all means, check out the podcasts. You can do that by going to thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. From iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Where you find yours, you'll find ours. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
KCAA Loma Linda.